to Women's Enterprise Center Strength in Number webinar series. This is our, I think it's our sixth in the series. And this one is a special one. It's just for you, the self-care edition. Our webinar today is all about taking care of yourself. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce our panelist. To let you know, we are recording today's session, so you will get a copy of the recording and some additional information after the webinar as well. So thanks again for joining us. Women's Enterprise Center is here to support you. This is a picture of me with a different scarf. I'm a business advisor and an entrepreneur in residence with Women's Enterprise Center. Delighted to be here today. So just for those of you who are new to Zoom, just a couple of quick notes. You can do on the bottom of your screen, if you scroll your mouse down, you will see a Q&A and chat. You can type your questions in or make a comment or just join in the conversation. Kristen, who I'm going to introduce very soon, wants this to be interactive and give you an opportunity to feel like you're a part of our webinar. So by all means, this is your best way to do it. Check in on the chat and type your question. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Kristin Buckley. Kristin has over 20 years experience working alongside leaders of in all levels of organizations, including entrepreneurs as leadership coach and creating programs to build greater leadership capacity and emotional intelligence. Her passion is working with women to empower them to stand with both feet in their power, to live life as the truest version of themselves. Thank you so much, Kristin, for coming here today with 20 years of experience in working with entrepreneurs and leaders. We're delighted to have you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Great. So today, I'm going to do a brief introduction, a little bit about Women's Enterprise Center. We're going to talk about how government is supporting entrepreneurs during the COVID crisis and any updates we might have about that. And then I'm going to turn the webinar over to Kristin, and she's going to talk about radical self-care beyond the bubble bath. I love that, Kristin. That's a great title. And then you're going to have a chance to ask your questions as well. We want to hear from you today. So again, thank you. So for those of you who don't know about Women's Enterprise Center, we are empowering women entrepreneurs throughout BC. We help women business owners to realize their business potential. And we do that in a number of different ways. Through loans, business loans up to $150,000, professional advice and resources, skills training such as this webinar, mentoring. We have mentoring programs, and by the way, this is the week. Check our website. Check out our website. Our mentor applications are open this week only. Go to our website and see what's happening. Mentoring, and most important, during this COVID crisis, we are here to be a part of a supportive community for women entrepreneurs. Specifically, ways that we can support you right now. Since the pandemic struck, small businesses did not have the opportunity to plan for this. Most were thrown into it, and there was not a lot of planning on how to manage, what to do. So Women's Enterprise Center also had to pivot very quickly. We put our all of our mentoring programs online so that our mentors were able to still connect. We created this Strength in Numbers series to bring you every week some updates on how you can manage, how your business can manage. We made concessions for our loans clients, which was over 90% of our loans clients were able to participate in. And just really turned to Zoom and other ways of connecting with you. If you look on our website, you will see that we have a page specifically, thank you, Carrie Lee. Carrie Lee's showing us the page here, specifically about COVID-19 resources and supports. I also want to tell you, with all of the government programs, our senior leaders at Women's Enterprise Center are weekly in touch with government officials. So stay tuned. We're keeping on top of it for you so that you can keep on top of what are the latest programs, loans, supports, wage subsidies. What are the changes that are happening in all of these areas that can support you in your business? So with where to start, government.ca is a great place to start. But amongst that as well, we have key messages that we want to ensure that you're aware of. The ways that we can support you, first of all, is the recordings. All of our COVID-19 strength in numbers webinars have all been recorded, and you can gain access to those. We want you to focus on what you can control. And I know that Kristen is going to be talking about that today in a lot more detail. Focus on what it is that you can control. Follow public health authorities. We want you to stay safe, to keep your staff safe, your customers. Follow public health authorities. Very important, manage your cash flow. And again, we've got a lot of detail on that in previous recordings. Manage your cash flow. Get some help. There's support available for you to do that. Practice your negotiation skills. And that ties in with asking for what you need. And that's another area that Kristen is going to be talking about today. Build resilience. You build resilience through innovation and through self-care. And we want you to create action plans. An action plan moves you from thinking or dreaming about something to turning it into a goal with a deadline. So create an action plan. Lots of details on our website for support on those in those areas. So today, meet Kristin Buckley. I'm going to turn this session over to her. And once again, Kristen, thanks for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you so much, Dawn. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here today and work with you guys. As Dawn had mentioned, I have a long career doing a lot of leadership development and executive coaching work in organizations of all shapes and sizes, men and women. And I'm myself an entrepreneur for the most of the last 10 years while raising my young kids, have worked for myself. So I'm in your shoes right now, actually. So I'm excited to speak with you because in all of that experience, what I have noticed is the women, and hey, I'm generalizing here, sweeping generalizations, but I have noticed a trend in the way that women lead and what goes on in their sort of minds and their psyche, what, thoughts are going through their head as they try to fall asleep with their head on the pillow. And what I realize is that there's really not a lot of leadership development programs or programs that really address sort of the female's perspective in leadership and all of these things that tend to kind of keep us awake at night, if you will. Men suffer from them too, for sure, but they're especially worrisome for women. So anyways, thank you very much, Dawn and Carrie Lee, for the opportunity to speak today. So yeah, so let me share my screen and I will get into things here. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Dawn, do you see that?
Not yet, nope.
Not yet, okay. I'll wait for it to...
Might just take a half a minute.
Yeah.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, wonderful. So, so the self-care edition. So let me get ahead here. So radical self-care, you know, when I'm quite honestly, I'm a bit of a, I call myself a recovering type A. I'm very ambitious. And ever since I can remember, I remember in high school, my mom saying, Kristen, what do you want for Christmas? And I'm like, Mom, I don't know. I'm too busy. I, you know, got this exam. And that's carried through my adulthood. And when someone would mention the word self-care, I would like, oh, are you kidding me? You know, that's going to slow me down. I've got all this stuff I got to get done. But then I finally had an aha moment where I got it. I got that actually to be more powerful, to do the things I want to do, it's a bit of that slow down to speed up mentality. And now I'm a believer. Now, you know, self-care, I sort of get on my soapbox and talk about self-care because I just know the difference it's made in my life. But then there's a ton of research, which I'm going to get into in just a minute. So it's really not an indulgence, it's a necessity. Right. But a lot of us can think about self-care as an indulgence. We think about it as a bubble bath, but as I'm going to get into in a moment, it's a lot more than just bubble baths. So we're going to talk about an easy framework to describe the different energy realms of self-care. And then really at the end of the day, why would you care about this? Well, it helps you function at a higher level, as we talked about, but it also gives you greater agency to fill your deepest desires. So it gives you clarity into what your essence really is about, your strengths, your areas for improvement, what blocks your energy, so that you can be your own best advocate. And it cultivates resilience. So Dawn mentioned resilience. There's also resilience, obviously, of your business in tough times like this, but then always, and your personal resilience to show up for your business and give it your all. By the way, I think Dawn did mention this, but if there are questions, please have them coming. I'm fluid, so you don't have to keep them to the end if you've got a burning, really great question. So I read this powerful book. It's called A Powerful Engagement. About 20 years ago, I introduced my coaching clients to it, and they loved it. And I actually just looped back with one of my former clients from almost 20 years ago recently. And he's like, you know, Kristen, I still use, you know, those things, those rituals, et cetera, that we learned, that you taught me from that book. So, and if you go to my website later under the resource section, there's also a Harvard Business Review summary. So if you don't have time to read the whole book, or you want to kind of get a better flavor for it, you can read the Harvard Business Review article on my website. And really, the essence of this is that it's a new paradigm around time management. So the essence is it's about energy management, right, to perform at a high level versus time management. And so here it is here, and I'll get into each level in greater detail. So we start at the bottom with our physical capacity, then moving into our emotional capacity, mental, and then at the top is a spiritual capacity. And along the way, you see the arrows are for rituals, or in other words, habits that we put in place to help us oscillate our energy. So this is all about expending energy, but then also replenishing the energy. And so the research comes from studying world-class athletes, actually, and then they applied it to sort of the layman and to folks in organizations. And so the whole notion is that life is a marathon, not sprints. And so how do you find ways to expend the energy? And these athletes obviously can't expend their energy all the time, otherwise they would burn out. So how do they pace themselves for the Olympics or the world-class competitions in a way that has them at their peak for the long haul? And so all of that is applied to sort of the laymen like you and I. So this physical realm, this is the first level of energy. Most of us are probably pretty familiar with it. It's the, eating well, getting your physical exercise, getting your sleep. So it's the quantity of energy that we have. And as a lot of us probably know, the more we expend energy, it's counterintuitive, but if we go for a walk, get some fresh air, move the body, it actually can help release some of the blocks that we might have from other levels emotionally. Maybe we're hung up on something, or we woke up grumpy, or we've got this sort of monkey mind moving the body can actually move those things throughout the body as well. And if we don't pay attention to this, we as we know, we can lose our temper, right? We can get sick over the long haul. There again, lots of research around folks who aren't sort of paying attention to this self-care piece eventually get sick because it manifests in the body. So the questions here, and I believe the slides will be sent to you guys afterwards, but so there's some further thinking on each of these realms that you can think about. Are you moving your body through exercise, even short walks? Am I resting, getting enough sleep? And then am I fueling my body with good food? So that's your physical energy. So the next level is your emotions. And so this is the quality of energy. It's either negative or unpleasant, right? Anger, jealousy, those types of energies, to pleasant, more positive, positive emotions. And so one thing about emotions that what I want to be really clear on here is there's no bad emotion. And so that is one thing that actually depletes our energy, is that we shame. For any of you who are familiar with Brené Brown's work, she talks a lot about vulnerability and shame and courage. And so the thing with emotions is to pay attention and get curious about what their message is, because they're messengers. It's not just shame. Well, I shouldn't be feeling this way. That actually in and of itself is an energy drainer that will drain your energy. So where you do want to go with emotions is to get curious, is how well do I understand the message of my emotion? What is it trying to communicate to me? It's also about connection to others. So, you can have a conversation with someone and you can have that connection because there's an emotional layer or appeal to what you were chatting about. And that's sort of the social realm that we need as well as humans. We're built to be social. And so this is feeding that energy realm. And again, too much of that, and we're different, everyone's different on the sort of introvert extrovert scale. Too much is not good, and too little is not good either. Again, it's back to that oscillation, finding the right spot, just right for you. And then overall in your life, do you tend to take on challenges like COVID's a perfect example, or upsets in your business, or things that don't go as well as you want in any area of your life, with more of a, okay, I got this, I can handle this, like a sense of optimism, or is it more negative? And obviously the more negative, then that in and of itself, that approach depletes the energy, taking away from your ability to really bring your full self to whatever you're doing. And then the third level is your mind. So this is the focus of energy. So this is your ability, this is the stimulation of your mind. So, a lot of us often sort of overstimulate our mind. We're busy at work, we're learning new things, we're trying to take their business to the next level. And so we need to give our minds a chance to rest as well, and do kind of mindless things. For me, it's creating white space to mountain bike or walk in the forest, things that just don't require that focus of attention. But then on the other hand, if our minds are not focused enough and we don't have that in our life, then that's also depleting, because you're not at your optimal level. So harnessing the power of our minds, we're going to get into this a little bit more detail, but is that inner critic. So we all have it, and no one gets a free pass, unfortunately. And it's that gremlin, inner critic. It's also known as the imposter, that little voice inside of us that says, well, who do you think you are to go take your business to the next level? Or, well, you can't do that. Well, who do you think you are? Those types of demeaning messages that just naturally happen. And so it's, how do we harness those voices? What do we do with those voices? Do we get curious with them? And again, when we allow those voices to be in the driver's seat, that takes away our power, and it takes away our energy. It's quite depleting. So the trick is okay, well, what is that voice? What is its message? How is it trying to help me? And getting curious with it. Just like how I suggested in the emotional realm, getting curious about the emotions that come up, not shaming any of the emotions.
Kristen, it's Carrie Lee. I just want to interject because I was on
Yeah,
a session this morning all around leadership. And it's interesting that you spoke of white space and how for you and for me, we've spoken about this, mountain biking and getting into the woods is that rejuvenation for us.
Yep.
But the recommendation we had this morning was to actually create some of that white space on your calendar,
Yes.
even in the middle of the day, 30 minutes to just, again, kind of pause and regroup, right? So get through the busy morning and then just take that pause and say, okay, I've done, this is what I've got done in the morning. Here's what I need to potentially do this afternoon or tomorrow, but not just to have it blocked off as time to regroup and refocus. So I love that you called it white space as well, that it just, reaffirmed what I learned this morning. So that was great.
Yeah. Thanks for chiming in, Carrie Lee. That is so important. And I would say, if there's one topic that is the most popular, if you will, most common that I coach leaders around is that it's the working on the business versus in the business. A great book on that, if anyone is interested, is The Good to Great by Jim Collins. Great book. But yes, Carrie Lee, is finding that white space to just let the day settle. And also what I would add to that is find the time of day that works best for you. I'm a morning person, so morning, that's what I love. Some people are more evening, or they like to do it in hindsight and sort of, okay, reflect on the day. What are the most important nuggets? What do I need to action tomorrow? And that sort of thing. But yeah, great point. Thanks, Carrie Lee. Okay, perfect. Move to the next slide. So this is the peak of the triangle, or sorry, of the pyramid that I showed in just a few minutes ago, the spiritual realm. And so I love, again, I'm a huge fan of Brené Brown, and she has this busy as a badge of honor thing that she says. And I love that. When I first said it, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's like, I measure sort of my importance, so the ego around how busy I am, and sort of you go to a dinner party, how was your weekend? Oh, I'm so busy. It's like, right. And so what COVID has been so good for is it sort of forced us to sort of, now we're on busy. So what's underneath that? Because there's a legit part of being busy when you're an entrepreneur and you've got a family as well, responsibilities, et cetera. There's a legit amount of busy. So I'm not saying, take off into the ether and do nothing, but it's being really discerning of what types of things you're busy with. Are they things that are filling you up, or are they things that are draining you? So let's get into that piece right there. So, really this is the energy that's depleted. And again, there's a ton of research by medical doctors actually that talk about this sort of more, nebulous sort of spiritual, if you will, thing, and how it does manifest for folks in terms of their body getting sick, alignment in their life, etc. Just around when they have an inconsistency around sort of their values or their purpose, their why, and how they spend their time. And so it's doing those check-ins to ensure, okay, am I living my life according to what it fills my cup up, keeps my tank full, that has meaning for me, that when I look back as my 100-year-old self, I'm going to look back and be proud of. Just while I'm throwing out another amazing book, I'm not sure if anyone's read it, called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Amazing book all around these memos. Her word would be memos that we take on. She focuses on women, but we're all guilty of it, where we take on these expectations that aren't actually ours, but we take them on as such because we don't really ever take the time to evaluate, hey, wait a minute, is this really me? So the point there being, when we are in alignment with that bigger why for ourselves and our purpose and values, then that gives us energy, and we can work longer hours because we're just in our flow, versus when you're living a life that's largely defined by external sort of memos or expectations. That's extremely draining. It's like a low grade energy drain on a daily basis. And so really the essence of that level is just thinking about the things you do. Shoulds is a big one. So someone asked me, well, how do I know? And so a big signal for me, when I hear it in my head and when I hear my clients say, I should, that's a huge, amber light to just get curious. Oh, interesting. Where is that should coming from? Is that my parents? Is that my partner? Where is that coming from? So that's one sort of tip there. Figure out your why or your purpose. Like what is the most meaningful for you? And then when you find that there's some things that maybe aren't in alignment, it's like, well, what do I need to let go of? And on the other flip side, what do I need to create more of in my life to fill this level of energy back up? Okay. So I thought I would go through a little bit of a list here, and I'm curious at the end, I'd love to hear what resonates most for folks about some of these sort of gotchas that you find yourself in. And if you, on top of that, if you have something to share about how you circumvent that or how you kind of deal with that, I'd love to hear that as well. Or don't save it till the end, just interrupt and we can talk about it. So we've already talked about this one, busy all the time. And Carrie Lee, thank you. White space to be. This is like, the be versus the do. It's just, you don't have anything planned. You're just being. And there's a bit too, I've done a lot of research and taken some courses on listening to our intuition, which again is why I love working with women, because we tend to be a little bit more in tune with that, or give that part of ourselves permission to be a stronger presence in our life. And so the renewer is to listen to that quiet voice. So we talked about the loud, obnoxious, inner chatter, inner critic, but what about the softer voice? And I don't know about you, but when I've listened to that softer voice, that intuition, it's never failed me. And so that renews your energy, fills up your cup. We talked about this a bit, but you can get bored, and actually doing nothing, you would think that's again counterintuitive. Well, how is that expending my energy, depleting my energy? But it does, right? When we're too bored, we get itchy picky, we get restless, and that actually drains our energy. We're not at our best. So on the flip side of that is finding healthy, internally directed activities, right? Internally directed, kind of speaking to that fourth level there, the spiritual, that really we know fills our cup, is a nice way for us to fill up our time, and not a busy for busy's sake, which we can do very easily if we're not careful. So then we end up kind of running around busy, depleting a lot of energy, but not getting that filled back up. So massive stiff upper lip and posturing strength. So, this is a big one. And, we can feel, especially if you're a parent or you are a caregiver to someone special in your life, or you feel like, or a leader, you have folks working for you, you feel a certain, pressure to be this source of strength at all times and not show vulnerability, and to never show weakness. But that actually, after a while, it depletes energy. And so it's what you don't want is just to be a puddle of emotion and, oh my God, the sky is falling, and so it's not that. It's being able to talk about, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I'm doing to move past it and work with it. Because the amazing thing about that is, especially when a leader does that, is it can be extremely powerful, giving permission to others to not have to posture, and everyone can be more transparent, build trust, sense of team, closeness, etc. So the opposite is, the massive puddle, or the victim, as and so a lot of people, they'll blame circumstances on certain things or certain people, etc. And like Dawn said right off the bat, it's identifying what you can control, because when you're blaming other circumstances, people, etc., A, that drains your energy, but B, it takes away your power. You're powerless. So the idea is find that one thing that you can control, and maybe that's just your attitude, right? I mean, COVID's been huge for that. It's like, man, the only thing I can control here really is how my attitude around it and how I show up in face of it. We talked, another energy drainer is the self-talk or imposter. So I want to talk a bit about self-compassion. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this body of work. I was just introduced to it very recently, but it was a game changer. And self-compassion is a form of self-care, and it's how we treat ourselves essentially when we have either at that emotional or the cognitive energy realm. We have either those emotions coming up that are uncomfortable, or that chatter in the head that's saying mean things. It's that moment, in the moment discussion or conversation, if you will, that we have with ourselves in lieu of that. And so it's speaking to ourselves with a similar kindness that we would give a friend. So what, I'm sure I'm not alone here. Well, I know I'm not alone here. Impostor syndrome is a thing. It's a body of work. When I learned that, I was like, wow, okay. So I'm not the only crazy person here with these voices in my head. But the research just proves that the kinder we can be to ourselves and give ourselves the kindness that we would give someone else having these same sort of thoughts, etc., the more we're able to preserve our energy and kind of be at our best for longer. So it's the one great thing I love about this is that it's not another thing to add to your list. So self-care is wonderful, but it does take effort to carve out the time for. Right? The great thing about self-compassion, it's portable, goes wherever you are. You don't have to carve out extra time for it. You might have to be more mindful of how you're talking to yourself, but it's you can take it anywhere. So I had a client once say to me, well, but that voice actually isn't that a good thing? Like, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me motivated, blah, blah, blah. And hey, and I get that, right? The problem with it is that it's short-lived. Again, going back to the analogy of, and to the research here, that life is a marathon. And so that monster chasing you, yes, it's motivating, but it's very depleting and it burns us out over the long haul. It's sort of short spurts of energy. And it doesn't motivate transformation. So, and by transformation, I mean like the big picture, the real stuff that you're trying to accomplish. It might help you kind of with point solutions of, okay, well, I got that meeting secured with that person that I wanted to get, or I got that, whatever those smaller sort of things are with your business.
Kristen, I wanted to, if I may, just jump in about the self-compassion and the messages that we give to ourselves. And someone once said to me, if you just stop long enough to listen to what it is that you're saying to yourself, and we often don't do that. We just believe everything that comes into our mind and believe it to be true without stopping, looking at that thought and really creating an awareness about what we're thinking about ourselves in a given situation, or the language that we choose. You idiot,
Yes, I love it. Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Completely. And so, part of the work I do with clients is, well, let's look at that inner narrative. Like, what is that voice saying to you? And we get curious with it. Again, we don't shame it, to get curious with it, to understand how can you reprogram that? And maybe reprogram is the wrong word, but then it's also looking at positive voices in your head that you can pull out and replace, right? So that it's the more positive voice that you give more credence to. Yeah. Thanks, Dawn. Yeah. Okay. So yes, and so people often ask, well, because I mean, that sounds very easy, and it does sound easy. It's obviously, it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy to do. So here's sort of how do you do self-compassion? So when you find yourself having those voices, like Dawn was saying as well, is it's creating a bit of space between your stimulus and response. So before you start to further kind of, okay, those thoughts, and they snowball, and you start adding to them, and oh my God, and then yeah, like last week you didn't do this, and blah, 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 right? There's a whole conversation. Is to create some space so that you can choose a different way to respond to the stimulus, right? So it's turning off your autopilot, if you will. And then it's calling in your courage, because there's probably, well, there's messages in there that want to come out, want to teach you something. And you need the courage to sort of listen to them. And so then it's standing both feet. You call in your courage, you're standing both feet in that courage with that space, and adding unconditional love and curiosity. So really what you're asking for is a giant hug, right? And so it's asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? What is the unmet need? And then beyond that is, do I have a request of myself or of someone else? After you've identified that need, well, how do I get that need filled? Is that something that I need to do differently and give myself permission to do that or to say that? Or is that a dance with someone I need to negotiate in the relationship? I need to negotiate things differently and ask someone else for something or to do something different. Okay. So you go to the second line here. So back to these sort of zappers, these energy zappers, accepting external expectations. We talked a bit about that already. So that really depletes your energy. And so it's finding those intrinsically driven activities that fill you up. The third one, I love this. And so after I read this book, I got way more in tune to relationships and more discerning to relationships, business relationships, but also personal relationships in my life that were actually draining. And so we've all had those people in our lives that we walk away and we notice a pattern of like, man, I just always feel crappy after I talk to that person. Or, I can feel it in my body. I feel really depleted after that conversation. And so it's a discernment of like, well, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. What's that about? Is that me? Is there something going on with me? Am I jealous? Is there some internalizing of something that's not fair? Or is that person, and there's things about them, maybe at a value level or choices, whatever, that's actually just in disagreement with who I am. And so it's the discernment around that. And again, going back to spending time with folks in your life that fill you up in some way, shape, or form, right? Now, does that equate to, well, relationships that are just easy? Because no, right? You know, a marriage, for example, is not easy. It does take energy and time, but I wouldn't put it in necessarily, unless perhaps that partnership isn't working for you, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's the same thing as what I'm talking about here around being out of alignment with values. That's just how relationships work, or tough sometimes. We talked about this a little bit, but your innate tendencies. So I think about extroversion, introversion off the bat. We talked a bit about that, but it's going with the flow a little bit more. Like for me, realizing that I am more of an introvert. And so working in an open concept sort of office environment was very draining for me. I didn't realize it at first, but then realized that's very draining. So it's things like that to take attention to, because that does deplete your energy as well. And then on the flip side of that is honoring ourselves, even if it rustles feathers. So again, there's a discernment there, because you don't want to just go around and go, here's what I want, and sort of pissing people off. But it's and I love the book, again, the Untamed book, because it's a real sort of, okay, how do I honor me and stay in relationship at the same time, and doing that dance and that negotiation. Okay, I'm almost at the end here, and then I want to hear from you guys. So I love this expression. I don't know where I picked this up from or if I made it up, but I've been thinking in these terms for a while now, is the junk food for the mind. So, you know, it's such a drainer. So this could be the rat hole of social media, or listening to news that's, you know, very negative and the sky is falling, et cetera, or very polarizing. Those things drain energy. And so we got rid of cable almost 20 years ago. You know, I don't watch the news. I'm very discerning what news I listen to and that kind of thing. So that's just something that, you know, in time on tech is very, can be very depleting. And then so on the opposite, renewers, reading, hobby, that sort of thing. Okay, so the next one, I love this one, junk on the lawn. So this is when, and again, I'm generalizing, but I've found women to do this a lot more than men. And this is that we try to make everybody happy and we take on other people's stuff. It's also known as over-functioning, or other people's baggage. I like to call it junk on the lawn. And so what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. So when my husband is going through a very heavy workload at work and he's heads down, he's very distracted, even if he's not working, he's heads down, he won't notice things like light bulbs that need to be changed, or, you know, cooking, forget it. So I end up sort of taking that all on, and it's exhausting. Now, he never asked me to take that on. I put that junk on my lawn. I took it on. Until I got smart and I realized, well, hold on a second, I have an unmet need here, which is to not have to be the sort of project manager for everything and just take on everything. I need a partner in some of these other things. And so my husband and I have had several conversations about that to sort of ensure that I'm not putting junk on my own lawn. So that's an example of junk I put on my own lawn. Now, if he were to have said to me, well, I expect you to do the dishes, you know, and to have those, then that's him putting the junk on my lawn. Either way, whether I put it there or someone else did, the junk is on my lawn. So it's discerning, and that is draining. But a lot of time, because we're built to be pleasers and not to rock the boat, etc., we will do that without even knowing that we're doing that. At least in my case, that's what I do. So I have to be very cognizant of not over-functioning, because it drains our energy. Keeping the peace. I think that's repetitive. I don't know why that's there again. My apologies. We just talked about that one. So we're nearing the end here. Here's a tool. So if anyone likes that sort of unmet needs, it sounds like Dawn has mentioned this one as well before with you guys. And again, here's Brené. I love Brené. So asking for what you need is one of the bravest things you'll ever do, right? And it's true, because it's advocating for yourself. It's standing 2 feet in your own power and saying, hey, this isn't quite working for me. Here's what I need, and here's what I'd like to chat with you about. So for simple steps there, again, simple, but not necessarily easy. So what am I observing? So typically you're triggered by something, and you're getting, again, on that emotional level, you're getting some feelings coming up. Perhaps you're getting the inner chatter as well coming up, and you might actually even feel it in your physical body of like heart rate, etc. So it's being in tune with all those 4 energy realms. And you actually, yeah. And then, so what am I feeling? So again, what is that feeling like in my body? And then what am I needing right now? So what is that unmet need? And so this often takes some white space to kind of give it room to reveal itself. And then, do I have a request of myself or someone else? What do I need to let go of? And what change can I make, or can they make to meet this need? Cool. So that's the end of me talking so much. And I think we're probably, about 15 minutes or so here for questions. I'm curious, Carrie Lee, we can take this any direction. If there's some questions that have come through, I'm happy to give you the floor, or we can use some of the questions that I've got here.
If you've got one you want to start off with, that's great. And then I can monitor the chat. Okay. But before we go into that, we had a comment, some feedback here as well. I don't know if you can see that, Kristen, in the chat as well. And it refers to going to mindset, right? So getting out of that fear mindset,
yeah,
which depletes the energy. You're talking about that energy zappers. You could drill it down to a simple binary. They say, is this thought feeling coming from fear or love, right? So, you know, kind of evaluating that as well, making, you know, the comment here is making the tools that you're talking about here today even more effective and useful when you know where that feeling is coming from.
Yes. So I love that. I'm curious because that's a lot of the discernment that I've been learning with respect to cultivating our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Is that intuition can help us discern what is fear-based, which would be the chatter, the loud, annoying chatter, versus what's coming from love. And that's the softer voice that's gently guiding us in a certain direction. So I love that point. Was there a question with that as well, Carrie Lee, or more of a point?
Just some feedback on where that, you know, how to maybe help yourself kind of go through some of these, you know, trying to evaluate yourself. What are the energy zappers for you, and what are some of the things that you might have to come over? What do you need to ask for it? And it's funny how this is all reflecting to, you know, stuff that I've been participating over these last few weeks as well. And Dawn can attest to this, talking about taking on things that belong to other people. The analogy that we had this morning was about rocks in a backpack, right? And you can take, like, if the person you're dealing with, that, you know, is there somebody in your life that you need to get rid of, as you said, like an energy drainer for you? If you start taking on all of their rocks and trying to fix them and do it for them, your backpack's just going to get too heavy. Yeah. Right. So it's just another way to look at that, you know, protecting your own energy as we have to do. And it came up in a session a couple of weeks ago about, what do I need? Don't be afraid to ask yourself, what do I need? And to act on that, because it's very, very, very important, especially right now with, you know, everything that's going on, and a lot of, you know, kids are being homeschooled and people still have busy jobs that they're working remotely. We're on Zoom for many hours a day, which I also find can be an energy drainer as well, because it's just a different way of interacting with people. So, you know, being mindful to yourself. If you can't be on Zoom for 6 hours, you know, try and reschedule that meeting or call to another day, where, you know, break it down to 3 hours a day, or just some of those ideas.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
The other litmus test that I really like is looking through the lens of my 100-year-old self. So when all of this, because we can get caught up in the minutia and the rat race of day to day, but kind of taking a ride up in a helicopter and thinking and looking back from the perspective of, when I'm 100 years old, what is this going to matter? What is the nugget, the learning here? Does it really matter? And that helps. It's sort of a similar way of coming at it from like the suggestion around fear versus love. And so if it's an egoic thing, that's fear, right? But if it's coming from a more expansive place, that's probably love.
Very good. Very good. So yeah, we'll, if you want to jump in with a question, and everybody too, in the chat, please feel free to go ahead looking at the questions that are on the screen and type in some thoughts and comments, and we'll take a look at those. But yeah, Kristen, if you've got something you want to put out to the audience, that would be great.
Yeah, well, I'd love, so the question there, which of those zappers resonates most with you? And then what could you do about it, or what have you done about it to stop it from zapping you so much? So I saw there's a comment here about zappers, the overfunctioning, busy all the time, need to protect my own energy. Love the dual question. What do I need? Do I have an ask for someone else? Going to try that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you know, one of the thoughts, Carrie Lee, while you were chatting there about really asking for what you need, if we really strip away why that's so powerful, it's because it's our self-love around, well, I matter enough to declare what I need. So if anyone's read Gifts of Imperfection, again, one of Brené's work, she talks a lot about self-worth. And so how a lot of this stuff that trips us up can all come down to how much worth do we put on ourselves. Because if we know that we matter, we know that we have things to offer, then it's a lot easier for us to declare that, be transparent about that with the rest of the world.
Kristen, you often talked about the balance between, there's so much of that understanding and awareness around, if this is an energy zapper, if I manage it and I'm aware of how, what impact it's having, I can turn it into a source of energy. It's that, am I unduly busy or am I busy? Like, I don't need to shame myself if I'm busy, but if I'm creating that as part of my logo or my badge of honor, there's where, those are some indicators that it's gone too far.
100%. I love that, because really you're expending the energy, but you're not getting fueled back because it serves no purpose for you. It's out of alignment with your values. You're just doing it to doing sake, right? At least if you're busy, like working on a business that you love and that serves a bigger purpose for you. Yes, you're expending energy and you are busy, right? But it also fills you up. Right.
It would be interesting to listen next time, just in general, chatter. How are you? How's it going? How many times that word comes up? Oh, I'm really busy. Like, it'd be a fun one to just pay attention to.
100%. And I've actually done that experiment where I go to dinner parties and I or if there's been moments in my life where I've maybe not been busy and I feel my inner critic is judging myself for that. Business might be slower or what have you, is to notice myself in that and how comfortable can I be and show up and just stand 2 feet and I'm a little quieter, right? It's a little quieter right now, right? Yeah. Let's just see. I'm just looking at this. I keep it simple. Ask my binary question, find an expansive feeling and sit with that for a while. Then I can hear my intuition. She's way wiser than my ego. Yeah, I love that. It's so true. I mean, there's ways to tap into the intuition that are quite powerful. Gratitude is a big one, and not a gratitude. I used to hear about gratitude journals and I never got them, to be honest. I was like, this feels painful to just write a list. It feels like another to-do. It felt empty. It was a busy for the sake of doing busy, really, a list for the sake of a list. But then I learned this tool for, sort of almost being in a meditative state, hand on the heart, and sort of really like deep breathing, so calming the nervous system, and like really listening, feeling gratitude first, because then we're at a high vibration. I'm getting really quite woo-woo here, but for any of you who believe in this sort of metaphysics stuff, it's getting into a higher vibration, which then allows the intuition to flow, because it can't when we're too rat racy and not calm. So I love that point. Thank you for that one.
I think too, Kristen, I'm going to jump in there because
go for it.
I find for me, and it's challenging right now because of the times that we're in, but you and I are both avid mountain bikers, and to me, that's my therapy, right? Getting out, because you can't think about anything else. There's so much going on. You're thinking of your body, and your bike is an extension of your body, connecting with the earth, and it's the best energy replenishment for me. And I'm struggling with that a bit now, as you know, because like a lot of the parks are closed and we have to be so careful. So do you have any ideas on how people can tweak or find some things that they can do at home? Because I know it's a bit challenging now with our constraints. So have you found any tips or things that you do, or even you, Dawn, like, how can we do a little bit of that self-care in the kind of constraints that we have right now?
Dawn, did you want to speak to that?
I was just going to say, I am very competitive with myself. So that type A. So I changed my Fitbit to a higher level of number of minutes a day of walking to be considered exercise. Yeah. I don't know how it does replenish me, because I do love to get my walk in. And what I've done is I've just increased the amount of time that I put into that walk every day to make sure that I get the exercise, but it also gives me the quiet time.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I've started gardening around the house, which I'd never done before. I always kind of looked and said, that, bed should be dug up and redone. And oh, I'll do that later, I'll do that. And this year I'm like, that's a bit of quiet time that I can just go out by myself, because we're in a situation where 5 adults in the home right now. So I get a lot of my energy back from alone time as well, right? So just that nice, calm, quiet. So I've moved to gardening. So we'll see how that goes.
That's awesome.
But yeah, just, modifying. And again, for me, the what do I need is a little bit of alone time. So finding how can I do that now in this space. So I encourage everybody to really figure out what is it that you need. And if you need to modify and find an alternate to look at that as well. Because we have to adapt, I think, for the next little while.
Totally. And I think, the other piece, so I love both of those points. The other thing that I'll do sometimes is actually just give myself permission to not work out, or to not have the physical, or to find a different way. Like you said, I'll feel it on my body. What is it do I really need? Is it that I need to sweat and really get physical? Is it the alone time, like you said? Is it just white space? And I'll kind of really go that extra layer of discernment around, well, what do I really need? Is it really mountain biking?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We have a great question that's come in for energy as well. So as the economy slowly reopens, how do we maintain a healthy level of work-life balance? Is there a risk that we're going to be busier than ever? That's a great question.
Yeah, and actually, I've heard from I've read rather that research is actually showing that during COVID, people were actually working more. So I think everyone's affected differently, because for some industries it slowed down, but for others, what they found is overall people are actually working more, which is crazy, because it was already off the charts. I mean, what I would personally say to that is, I think that I call it the bit of the COVID cocoon. And I think for all of us, we've probably had some aha moments, realizations, some clarity around some things in our life that maybe we don't want to bring outside of the cocoon to sort of the new norm. Things that no longer serve us, that we don't need anymore. Maybe it's the busy for busy's sake. And so I would say, if we're able to let go, discern, and then let go of that, that will actually free up time for the stuff that is more potent, that gives us that energy and depletes it a lot less. So that's what I would say, is kind of rejigging how we spend our time.
And Kristen, I think that could work alongside with some analysis. So for the businesses to look at, they're going back into business and asking some of those same questions to support self-care. Is, who are my A-list customers? Who are the people that I enjoy working with? And, go out and find more A customers. Maybe you need to fire some customers to manage workload in a way that's going to be helpful. But just really looking at what parts of your business are more profitable, so that you're getting a return on your investment, and really doing some analysis even before starting back into the startup.
I love that, Dawn. And I'll piggyback. There was a question here about sharing how I expanded my business channels or increasing customers. So I actually rely on almost 100% referrals. And so so I think it's perhaps thinking to your customers that you already have, and figuring out maybe there's a program you can put some sort of incentive in place to tap into their networks and see if they have folks that they can refer to you as well.
Can I add to that? Is ask your customers.
Yeah.
Ask them for their help.
Yeah, love it. Because again, it's back to, like, if they're happy with your work, they're probably a fan of yours, and they're going to want to advocate for you. So yeah, stand both feet in your power, and ask for it. Yeah, love it.
Okay. We are 1 minute to 3 o'clock. Kristen, you've covered so much today, and from the theoretical to some practical tools, some recommendations, but just those real pragmatic pieces of what it is that we can do to provide self-care. and how very important it is.
Mm.
I want to thank you and remind our listeners today that you will get some more information. It'll come to you via email. You'll be able to connect with Kristen, find out more about what she's doing. I would also like to remind everyone, this week is our mentoring intake. We only do this a couple of times a year. So if you are looking for a mentor, this is the time. Go to our website, one-to-one mentoring, find my mentor. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your questions, your comments. I also want to remind you that this week, the Ready, Set, Get Back to Business webinar is coming up. And again, you know, on our website, Ready, Get Back to Business. Lots of things are happening. Again, Women's Enterprise Center is here to support you through this. Some great tools. Stay tuned. There are more government announcements coming through, so please do stay tuned to what's coming up and what's available. Kristen, thank you kindly. Some great information today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I had so much fun.
Great. Thank you, Carrie Lee, our background person who made it all happen.
Thank you both. This was great. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we'll be back here next Tuesday as well at 2 p.m. for another session as well, with some updates. It's all going to be on connections and networking and staying in touch with everybody as we go through this pandemic and the slow reopening of the economy and our businesses. So hope to see you back here again next week. So thanks everybody. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks,
Have
Carrie.
a great day.
Thanks, everyone.